You see her sitting in the quiet kitchen. She stares at a photo from last year. She touches the faded scar on her wrist. The neighbors say she had a lucky break, but God says she has a holy assignment. She is not alive by accident. She is alive by appointment. The world looks at her and sees a survivor. Heaven looks at her and sees a soldier. She remembers the weight of the water. She remembers the darkness of the room. People told her to just move on. They told her to forget the trauma. But she cannot stop asking one question. Why am I still standing here today? Why did I make it out? The silence of the house feels heavy. The why keeps her awake at night. Maybe that is you watching this tonight. You have lived through the impossible. You have walked through the fire. You have survived the storm. God did not just save your skin. He saved your story for a reason. You are not a random statistic. You are a divine preservation. This is not a theory I made up. This is a spiritual truth for you. Maybe you have stared at the ceiling in a hospital. Maybe you have walked away from a total wreck. Maybe you have survived a sickness with no cure. Maybe you have outlived those who were stronger. Maybe you have felt guilty for being the survivor. You are searching for the meaning in the mess. You want to know if it was all luck. I am here to tell you it wasn't. Stop carrying the weight of the why. Start carrying the weight of the what. God kept you for a specific mission. This video will reveal why you were preserved. It will show you the 7 signs. These signs prove you are marked by God. They show that He has a plan. It is time to see the truth. Think about the details of that day. 1 second later, and you were gone. 1 inch to the left, and it was over. The margin was 0. The world calls that a miracle of math. The believer calls that the hand of God. His hand was your shield that day. He blocked the arrow meant for you. He held the door of death shut. You look in the mirror every morning. You see a person who was almost gone. That realization can be very heavy to carry. It can make you feel like a ghost. You feel like you are living on borrowed time. But God does not lend out time. He grants time with a specific purpose. He is the author of your days. You are not a mistake of nature. You are not a glitch in the system. If you were meant to go, you would. The fact that you are here is proof. It is proof that God is not finished. The enemy tried to close your book early, but the author had another chapter written. He holds the pen in his hand. I want you to take a breath. Feel the air move in your lungs. That air is a gift from the King. It is a sign of His mercy. It is a sign of His power. He is calling you to look up. He is calling you to move forward. Listen to the signs. Number 1, the physics of the moment failed to claim you. And that failure was a divine intervention. Let's start with the truth. You should not be here reading this. According to the laws of this world, your story ended back then. The momentum was too great. The medicine was too weak. The water was too deep. If nature had its way, but nature is not the final authority. The one who wrote the laws of gravity is the only one who can suspend them. When you survived, it wasn't because you were strong. It was because you were held. Think back to the specific mechanics. You were in the car on that rain-slicked road. You felt the tires lose their grip. You saw the headlights. Time seemed to slow down to a crawl. You braced for an impact that should have crushed the metal. You closed your eyes and waited for the sound of breaking glass. But the glass stayed whole. The metal did not buckle. The car stopped exactly. There is no logical reason for it. The math does not add up. The police officer looked at the scene. He told you that you were lucky. But you didn't feel lucky. You felt watched. Maybe it wasn't a car. You watched the monitors flicker in the dark. You heard the doctors whispering in the hallway. They were using words that meant no hope. They were preparing your family for the worst news. You felt the life draining out of your limbs. You were ready. Then, something shifted in the atmosphere of the room. A warmth moved through your chest. The next morning, the tests came back. The doctors called it a medical mystery. They called it a miracle of science. But you know that science was just the witness. God was the doctor. Sound familiar? You have been through a moment where the physical world failed to kill you. The Bible speaks about this kind of divine protection in Psalm 91, verse 11. It says that He will command His angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. This is not a metaphor. It is a spiritual reality. Think about the Apostle Paul. In Acts chapter 27, he was on a ship in the middle of a violent storm. The sailors had already thrown the cargo. They had given up all hope of being saved. The wind was too strong for the ship to handle. But an angel stood by Paul that night. The angel told him that he must stand before Caesar. Because of that assignment, the storm, the ship was eventually wrecked on the rocks. The wood was smashed to pieces. But every single person on that boat reached the shore alive. Paul did not survive because he was a good swimmer. He survived because God had a destination for him. Your ship might have been wrecked. Your old life might have been smashed on the rocks. You might have lost everything in the process of surviving. But you reached the shore. You are breathing the air of the living today. The physics had to bow to the purpose of the King. If the enemy could have taken you, he would have. The fact is your greatest clue. It means there is something in your future that he is terrified of. It means there is a Caesar you are meant to stand before. Do not let the trauma of the wreck blind you. It was a stroke of grace. Number 2, you feel like a stranger in your own old life. Your soul outgrew your surroundings. Let me say this straight. The person who went into that crisis is not the person who came out. You survived the trauma. But the version of you that fit into your old world died there. Now, you are walking around in a life that was built for a stranger. You try to put on your old habits like an old coat. You try to laugh at the same jokes. You try to care about the same small dramas at work. But the coat is too tight. The jokes feel hollow. The drama feels like a waste of the breath you fought so hard to keep. You are experiencing a spiritual displacement that most people will never understand. Think about the first time you went back to your favorite restaurant. You sat in the same booth. You ordered the same meal. But as you looked around, you felt like an observer. You watched people complaining about the wait time. You heard someone shouting about a cold side dish. A few months ago, you might have joined in. Now, you just want to reach across the table. You want to tell them that life is too short for this. You want to tell them how thin the veil really is. You realize that you are speaking a different language now. You are fluent in the language of the eternal. Everyone else is still stuck in the grammar of the temporary. You go to your closet and look at your clothes. You look at the shoes you used to love. You look at the items you spent so much money on. Suddenly, they look like props from a movie you no longer star in. You scroll through your phone. You see the names of people you used to call every day. You go to type a message, and then you stop. You realize you have nothing to say. It is not that you are angry. It is not that you are better than them. It is simply that the bridge has burned down. You are standing on one side of a great divide. They are still on the other. You feel a heavy holy silence growing inside of you. You have been there. This is exactly what the Bible describes in the life of Moses. He grew up in the highest courts of Egypt. He was a prince. He had the best education in the world. He ate at the table of Pharaoh. For 40 years, he was a resident of the palace. Then, he had an encounter with a burning bush in the desert. Exodus chapter 3 verse 5 says the place where he stood was holy ground. In that one moment, the palace died to him. He could never go back to being a prince of Egypt. He could not wear the crown of a god king. He had seen the real God. Moses spent the rest of his life as a stranger. He lived in tents. He wandered in the sand. To the world, he had lost everything. To God, he had finally found his address. You are in that same transition right now. The fire you survived was your burning bush. It stripped away the Egyptian identity you were wearing. It burned off the fake gold and the heavy makeup. It left you with nothing but the truth. Now, the palace feels cold. The old crowd feels distant. Do not try to force yourself back into the old mold. God did not save you so you could be normal. He saved you so you could be holy. He moved you out of the crowd so he could move into your heart. The world sees a person losing their social life. God sees a person who is finding their purpose. Number 3, the noise of the world has gone silent. God removed the distractions to get your attention. Let's be honest. You used to love the noise. You kept the radio on in the car. You kept the television on at home. The silence felt like a threat to you. It forced you to think about things you didn't want to face. You filled your schedule with people and parties. You chased every new trend and every social media update. You were busy, but you were not going anywhere. Your soul was starving in the middle of a feast of distractions. Then, the crisis hit. Everything you relied on was stripped away. In a second. Now, the silence feels like a sanctuary. You find yourself driving with the music off. You are listening for a different frequency. You are listening for the voice of God. Think about how you spent your Tuesday nights before. You probably spent 3 hours scrolling through a screen. You cared about the opinions of people you haven't seen in 10 years. You worried about the brand of your shoes. You stressed over the perfect photo of your dinner. Now, you look at those old worries and you laugh. They feel like toys. In the hands of an adult, you have seen the edge of eternity. You have looked into the eyes of death and lived. When you come back from that place, your appetite changes. You no longer have a taste for the shallow things of this life. You want depth. You want truth. You want the things that can survive a fire. You go to the mall and you realize something strange. There is nothing in the stores that you actually want to buy. You look at the bright lights and the loud music. It all feels like a hollow movie set. You see people arguing over a parking spot. You see them crying over a broken phone. A part of you wants to grab them by the shoulders. You want to tell them that none of this matters. You want to tell them that life is a gift, not a right. You find yourself opening your Bible instead of your laptop. You are looking for words that have weight. You are looking for a foundation that will not shake. Maybe that is you. This shift in your heart is exactly what happened to King Solomon. He was the richest man who ever lived. He had more gold than he could count. He had more fame than any man on earth. He tried every pleasure. He built every project. He had everything the world says will make you happy. But then, he had a moment of clarity. In the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 1, verse 2. He said it plainly. He said that everything is meaningless. He called it a chasing after the wind. He had to see the end of everything to find the beginning of God. He realized that if it doesn't last for eternity, it isn't worth his time. You have been given the same clarity that Solomon had, but you didn't have to build a kingdom to get it. You just had to survive a storm. God allowed the world to go quiet so you could finally hear him. He pruned the dead branches of your interests so the fruit of the Spirit could grow. The things that used to excite you now feel like a burden. The things you used to ignore now feel like life itself. Do not be afraid of the silence in your life right now. Do not feel guilty because you don't care about the news anymore. God is recalibrating your heart. He is preparing you to focus on the one thing that matters. He is calling you to a deeper walk. Let that sit for a moment. Number 4. The itch in your soul has become a fire, and that fire is a divine assignment. Here is what nobody tells you about surviving. Most people think survival is the end of the story. They think the goal is to get back to your old routine. They want you to just pay your bills again. They want you to go back to your hobbies. But you found that the old routine feels like a lie. You wake up at 4 in the morning. Your heart is racing. It isn't fear this time. It is a strange kind of excitement. You feel a heavy pull toward a specific group of people. Maybe it is the foster kids. It is the people fighting the same cancer you beat. This nudge will not leave you alone. It is like a radio playing. You can hear the music, but you can't see the artist yet. You go to the grocery store on a Tuesday morning. You are just looking for milk and bread. Then you see a woman standing by the fruit. She looks tired. Her eyes are red from crying. A year ago, you would have looked away. You would have minded your own business. But today, your feet move before your brain can stop them. You find yourself standing next to her. You say a simple word. You tell her that it gets better. You see her shoulders drop. You see a spark of hope in her eyes. You walk back to your car with a strange peace. You realize that your shyness has been replaced by a mission. You are no longer living for your own comfort. You are living as a messenger for the King. You have felt this nudge. This is the exact same fire that burned in the heart of Nehemiah. He was a man with a very comfortable life. He lived in the palace of the king of Persia. He had a prestigious job as the royal cupbearer. He was safe, and the poverty of his homeland. But then he received a report about his people. In Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 4, he learned that the walls of Jerusalem were broken. He learned that the gates were burned with fire. He didn't just feel bad for them. He sat down and wept for days. He fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. The luxury of the palace suddenly felt like a heavy weight. He couldn't enjoy the king's wine while his people were in ruins. God had kept Nehemiah alive and prosperous for a specific moment. He wasn't there to enjoy the palace. He was there to use the palace to rebuild the city. He asked the king for help. He traveled across the desert. He stood against enemies who wanted to kill him. He rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem in only 52 days. Your survival is your palace moment. God has preserved you so you can rebuild something that is broken. He has given you a specific burden because He has given you a specific grace. The thing that breaks your heart is often the thing God called to fix. Do not ignore the itch in your soul. It is the compass of the Holy Spirit. Who you were survived for. Number 5, you found a peace that should not exist in trauma. This quiet strength is God's signature on your life. Let's be honest. Most people expect you to be a mess right now. They look at your history and they see a tragedy. They expect you to be bitter. They expect you to be fragile. They wait for you to crumble under the weight of the memories. But you didn't crumble. In the middle of the darkest night, you found a light that didn't come from a lamp. You felt a calmness that defied the circumstances. This isn't because you are cold. It isn't because you are numb. It is because you are anchored to something deeper than the surface. Think about that night in the waiting room. You sat on the plastic chair for 6 hours. You watched the clock on the wall tick. You heard the machines. You watched other families pacing the floor and weeping. You looked at your hands. They were steady. You felt confidence. It didn't make sense. You knew the situation was bad. You knew the odds were against you. But you didn't scream. You felt like you were being held by something invisible. You closed your eyes, and you felt a presence. It was a peace that felt like a person. You walked back into your house after it was over. The house was empty. The silence was loud. But you didn't feel lonely. You felt like you were standing in a holy place. You made a cup of tea. You watched the steam rise from the mug. You realized you weren't afraid of tomorrow. You had seen the worst, and you were still standing. You weren't just surviving. You were resting in a war zone. This is a peace that the world cannot give. And that means the world cannot take it away. Maybe that is you. The Bible calls this a peace that passes all understanding. In Philippians chapter 4, verse 7, it says this, "Peace will guard your heart and mind." This is exactly what happened to Daniel. He was a man of high position. In a foreign land, his enemies were jealous of his success. They tricked the king into signing a decree that would kill him. Daniel didn't run away. He didn't hide in a closet. He went to his room and prayed, just like he did every other day. He was thrown into a den of hungry lions. The king couldn't sleep all night. The king was worried and paced his palace. But Daniel was in the pit with the predators. He was at rest. Daniel survived the night because God shut the mouths of the lions. The miracle started before the lions were tamed. The miracle was the peace Daniel felt while he was being lowered into the hole. He was more comfortable in the den with God than the king was in the palace without him. You have been in your own lion's den. You have felt the breath of the enemy on your neck. You have heard the growl of the problems that consume you. But God put a wall between you and the teeth of the trial. He gave you a calmness that baffled observers. This peace is your proof. It is the evidence that the Prince of Peace has moved into your situation. It was not your strength that kept you calm. It was His presence that kept you whole. This is your truth. Number 6. The doors to your past have been permanently locked, and that closure was God's protection. Here is what nobody tells you. When you survive a great storm, your first instinct is to find shelter. You naturally look for the places where you used to feel safe. You look for the people who knew you before the scars. You try to return to the career that felt stable, but you are finding that those doors are now sealed shut. Every time you reach for the handle, it refuses to turn. You feel like you are being rejected by your own history. But you are not being rejected. You are being redirected by a hand of mercy. Think about the job you tried to get back. You had the experience and the skills. You knew the manager and the routine. You thought it would be perfect to recover. You applied with confidence. You waited for the call that never came. Then you found out they hired someone else. You sat in your car and cried. You felt like the world was moving on. You felt like your survival made you a ghost. Then you heard about what happened to that company. A few months later, they went under. Or the atmosphere became toxic. If you had walked through that door, you would have been crushed. You were looking for a bed. But God saw a trap. He locked the door because He knew you could not handle another fight. He wanted you to have a clean slate. He knew that the old wineskin would burst. You tried to call that old friend group. You missed the inside jokes. Nobody replied for 3 days. When they finally did, the energy was different. They talked about things that no longer mattered. You realized that you had nothing left to say to them. You felt a sting of loneliness. You felt like you lost your tribe. Sound familiar? You are experiencing the lock of the Holy Spirit. God often closes a path to ensure the right road. Think about the life of Abraham. He was a man with a settled life in the land of Ur. He had a family and business. He was comfortable and he was known. Then God spoke a word that changed everything. He told Abraham to leave his country. Abraham could not take his old life with him. He had to become a stranger to become a father of nations. God didn't just call him forward. He made it impossible for him to go back. Once Abraham saw the vision, the past lost flavor. He spent the rest of his life living in tents. He never went back to the city of his birth. The bridge was burned. You are standing in your own between season right now. You have left Ur, but you haven't reached the promised land yet. You are tempted to look back at the walls of the old city. You think about the comfort of the familiar. He is being consistent with the call on your life. If he let you go back, you would settle for a version too small. He has saved you for a bigger world than the one you left. Do not waste energy trying to pick the lock. If God closed it, it was because there was nothing left for you inside. If he moved the people, they couldn't go. He is forcing you to look at the horizon. He is making room for the new connections that are coming. He is preparing a table for you in a place you haven't seen yet. Trust the lock. It was a gain of direction. Number 7, the weight of your presence has changed. People sense the fire you walked through. Let me say this straight. You are not the same person you were before the crisis. You carry a spiritual weight that was not there before. People can feel it when you walk into a room. You don't have to say a single word. You don't have to wear a special sign. There is a gravity to your spirit now. It is the weight of a person who has seen the edge. It is the authority of someone who survived the impossible. You used to blend into the background of every crowd. Now, you find that people naturally move toward you. They are looking for the peace you have. Think about the last family gathering you attended. You sat on the couch with your cousins. They were talking about the same old things. They were complaining about their neighbors and their cars. Usually, you would have joined the conversation. You would have added your own complaints to the pile. But this time, you just sat there and listened. You had a small smile on your face. You felt a deep compassion for them. Suddenly, the room went quiet. Your sister looked at you and stopped mid-sentence. She asked you what you were thinking. She didn't ask it with an attitude. She asked it with a sense of wonder. She sensed that you knew something. She sensed that you knew something she didn't. You have noticed this at the grocery store too. You are standing in line waiting for your turn. The person in front of you is having a hard time. They are fumbling with their bags and their keys. They turn around to apologize for the delay. They look into your eyes and they stop. Their expression softens immediately. They feel a sense of safety coming from you. They might even start telling you about their day. You find that strangers are drawn. You find that strangers are drawn to your silence. They sense that your soul is anchored in deep water. They want to know how you stayed so steady. You know this feeling. This is exactly what the Bible describes in the life of Job. He was a man who lost everything in a single day. He lost his wealth and his 10 children. He lost his health and his reputation. In the city, he sat in the ashes and scraped his skin with broken pottery. His friends spent days accusing him of hidden sins. They mocked his integrity while he was at his lowest point. But Job held on to his faith in the dark. He refused to curse God, who had given him life. He walked through a fire that would have destroyed anyone else. When the trial was over, Job's presence had changed. When the trial was over, Job's presence had changed forever. In Job chapter 29, verse 8, he describes how people reacted to him. He said the young men saw him and stepped aside. He said the old men rose to their feet when he arrived. Even the princes stopped talking. Even the princes stopped talking when he was near. They laid their hands over their mouths in respect. Why did they do this? It wasn't because of his money. God had doubled his wealth. But that wasn't the secret. They stood up because they sensed the weight of his endurance. He was a man who had looked at death and did not blink. He carried the authority of a survivor. You carry that same holy gravity today. Your scars are not signs of weakness. They are medals of honor from a war you won. The trial didn't just happen to you. It happened for you. It burned away the superficial layers of your personality. It left behind a spirit of solid gold. People sense that you cannot be easily shaken. They sense that you have a direct line to the Father. You are a living testimony of God's preserving power. You don't need a pulpit to preach a sermon. You are the sermon. Your life is proof. You walked out of that hospital thinking you were just lucky. You thought you beat the odds by a roll of the dice. But chance does not have a plan for your life. Chance does not know your name or your future. You are not a survivor of random luck. You are a survivor of divine love. The world calls your survival a statistical anomaly. God calls your survival a spiritual necessity. You were not saved because you were better than others. You were saved because your work is not finished. Let that truth sink into your spirit today. The enemy did not miss his shot at you. The hand of the Father simply blocked the blow. He saw the darkness coming for your soul. He stood in the gap and said, "Not this one." You are a trophy of his grace. You are a witness of his power on earth. Every morning you wake up is a victory. Every breath you take is a testimony of his mercy. I am talking to the one who feels invisible. I am talking to the one who feels empty. You have been asking why you are still here. You have been wondering if you have a place. The answer is in the scars you carry. The answer is in the fire you survived. You were not kept alive to live a small life. You were not kept alive to hide in the shadows. God is calling you out of the quiet. He is calling you into your true identity. The world says your best days are over. They say you should just be happy to be alive. But the God of the Bible disagrees with them. He says, you are just getting started. He says the fire was your training ground. He says the storm was your graduation ceremony. You have a weight of authority on your life now. You have a story that can set people free. Do not be afraid of the why anymore. Embrace the what that is coming next. You were not abandoned in the darkness of that trial. You were protected in the secret place of the Most High. The walls of the old life had to fall down. They were too small for the person you are becoming. The people who left you were a distraction. The doors that closed were a divine rescue. You are standing on holy ground today. You are a living proof of the goodness of God. Your life is not your own anymore. It belongs to the one who held the wind. You were never meant to be defined by who stayed. You were meant to be refined by who left. You are not a victim of your past. You are the architect of a new future. The power that kept you alive is inside you. The spirit that shut the Lions' mouths is with you. Go forward with your head held high. Walk with the confidence of a chosen child. God is not done with your story yet. The greatest chapters are still being written by His hand.